Hello my dear friends, welcome back to another video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today we have some very exciting Star Wars news. So at the end of April we have a couple of huge events, Star Wars Celebration of course, and the premiere of Andor Season 2. But interestingly enough, while there seems to be a big focus on the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, and hopefully something for Revenge of the Sith, there is another anniversary which has kind of gone under the radar, the 45th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. Now while Lucasfilm themselves aren't commemorating it, they did a lot for the 40th anniversary, same with Return of the Jedi in 2023, and I'm sure they'll do something for the 50th. There is someone who is celebrating it, George Lucas himself. Thank the maker. It's just been announced, and this is via Deadline.com, George Lucas will present a special screening to launch the 16th Classic Film Festival. I really can't wait to hear what George is going to say about it, 45 years on. The Empire Strikes Back was a notoriously difficult movie to film. Budget overruns, weather disasters, behind-the-scenes tensions, the passing of Lee Brackett. There was so much that went into making the first sequel to Star Wars.
Therefore, it actually has a lot of challenges that the first chapter and the third chapter don't have, which is there's no beginning and no end. It had lots of blizzards, it was very, very cold. It was very challenging on lots of levels.
Empire is one of those movies George always brings up, more or less every time he's interviewed about Star Wars, the greatest sequel ever put to screen. Even last year at Cannes Film Festival, George spoke about it. But now, on its 45th anniversary, I can't wait to see what he says about it, although it might be very, very brief. As has been the case since 2010, it's such a shame we don't have the director, Irvin Kershner, with us. But at least we still have George. And I find the case of Irvin Kershner's relationship to Star Wars really fascinating because, at first, he was reluctant. He didn't want to make the sequel to one of the greatest films of the 1970s. But then he did it, and then he notoriously refused to direct Return of the Jedi, later regretting it. At the time he was told, just like Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher were, the plan was 3 trilogies, and there's a famous interview where he says, one day long into the future they'll make 7, 8 and 9. He was right, but it wasn't with George, it was with Disney. If you've been watching me for a long time, then you know I can go on and on for days about why I love this movie so much, how it took the themes of the first movie and inverted them. How it really is Star Wars upside down. A darker, more complex, emotional, character-driven movie. We got the amazing Battle of Hoth, we got to meet Yoda, we got a very philosophical approach to the Force, which really built on what Obi-Wan said to Luke in A New Hope. Not to mention the biggest plot twist of all time.
I am your father.
In the original script, Vader said, Obi-Wan killed your father, but thank goodness it was changed. Then there's the amazing soundtrack. The Imperial March, Yoda's theme, John Williams at his best. And something so underappreciated, The Empire Strikes Back was one of the first major motion pictures to end with the heroes losing. An amazing cliffhanger, and fans loved it. Luke just found out Vader was his father, he lost his hand on Bespin, and Star Wars fans were dying to know what was going to happen next. It's such a shame Irvin Kershner didn't direct Return of the Jedi. As incredible and iconic as Return of the Jedi was, there are plenty of fans who felt as though it lacked the emotional gravity of Episode 5. And that's not just in retrospect, that was a popular opinion voiced at the time. But overall, the original trilogy is classic and timeless. And I'm so happy George is going to present the 45th anniversary screening. I'm so excited to hear what he says, even if, like I say, it's very brief. So moving on, my dear friends, we have a very interesting update for the Mandalorian and Grogu. The budget for the upcoming Jon Favreau movie has finally been unveiled, and it might surprise you. There's good news and bad news, and the bad news is more of a forecast, more of a projection, and it is kind of concerning, but let's talk about this. So the Mandalorian and Grogu, which follows on from the 3rd season, has an estimated budget of $166.4 million. For reference, that is the lowest budget Star Wars movie ever made under Disney. So that's a good thing. They're taking less risk if the box office isn't good. The budget is similar to the first season of Mando. So for a feature-length movie of 2+ hours, I'd say that's pretty good. I think Disney and Lucasfilm, if they were being realistic, knew that this was always going to be a risk. It's a very tame budget. The Force Awakens and Rogue One, $200 million apiece. Although, The Force Awakens was closer to $500 million when all was said and done. Solo: A Star Wars Story, $275. The Last Jedi 300, and The Rise of Skywalker 416 million. So this really is an example of what Bob Iger said when he mentioned they need to cut costs, they need to focus on profit. So with this in mind, 166 mil in theory is low risk, high reward. But what is the box office going to look like for Star Wars' first movie since 2019? I've seen projections anywhere from 300 million to 700 million. And remember guys, 166 million is not taking into account marketing costs. And if this is just the initial report, it might be a similar situation to The Force Awakens, where the actual budget when all is said and done is much higher. If that's the case, they might need to achieve a 400 mil box office just to break even. So we really can't jump the gun on this one. After this news broke, I saw fans on social media give their input. Apart from a few diehard Mando fans, there isn't much faith in this project, and even if it's just in part, I think the leaks are to blame. We should be getting a trailer at Star Wars Celebration. Fingers crossed, it's not just for those in attendance. Another major question, is Pedro Pascal back? I think so. I can 100% see that being something they announced during the Mandalorian and Grogu panel at Celebration. And I don't just mean the voice, obviously he's going to record his lines. I mean on set, without his helmet. But I can't see them doing the Mandalorian movie for the big screen, and Pedro not being involved in a more proactive way. So that's coming up very soon, and it is worth adding as a caveat, big budgets don't always mean good films. And if this is returning to the same tropes from the first season, similar kind of vibe, similar feel to it, then having a similar budget to that pilot season does make sense. I do have faith, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I really want to love this movie. I want The Mandalorian to make a triumphant pop culture return, because after season 3 guys, it's felt super dead. All of that anticipation was killed off, and these days, aside from occasional news which comes up, I just don't see Mando being a topic discussed as often anymore. So here's a breakdown from Collider.com, all of the Star Wars movies and their budgets to date. And before you say, what about inflation? These have all been adjusted accordingly. Star Wars A New Hope, 11 million. Empire Strikes Back, 18 million, although that did elevate. Return of the Jedi, 32.5 million. Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, 115 million, same with Attack of the Clones. Revenge of the Sith, 113 million, and we spoke about the others. So hopefully we get a solid movie. It's got a lower budget, so fingers crossed, big box office. Not just for the sake of Disney, but for the sake of the Star Wars franchise. I've said it before, we need a win. We really do. Share your thoughts on everything we spoke about in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video guys, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.